In the hospital for just a fracture. Pause. Acting like a child. You need to pull yourself together. Get up and make dinner, or else. We're done. How could anyone react that way to news of their wife in the hospital instead of expressing worry first? Most wouldn't get it, but this is my husband. I can't handle it anymore. I was at my wit's end, but there was someone even angrier with my husband than I was. That turned out to be his own parents. I wonder how he'll respond when they intervene. I'm Eileen, 29 years old. I landed a job at a well-regarded company right after finishing college, even though I don't work at the main office. My salary's quite good. My husband Matt is 32. We met at a client's office, and after a few meetings, he took the initiative to swap numbers. He later invited me to dinner, and after dating for a year and a half, we took the plunge when he proposed. Looking me in the eye, he said, I want to spend my life with you. Eileen, will you marry me? I'm happy, but are you sure about us? I want you, Eileen. You're the only one who makes me feel truly happy when we're together, Matt. Thank you. I want to spend my life with you too. We were showered with blessings at our wedding and pledged to love each other forever. But 2 years later, if asked if love still exists between us, we couldn't confidently say yes. The reason is simple. Matt has changed in these 2 years. It started with something small. Since we got married, he began gradually shifting household responsibilities to me. We had agreed to split chores evenly, since we were both working before we got married. Despite this, Matt had stopped doing his share of chores like cleaning the bathroom and washing the dishes. Initially, he would reluctantly do them when I reminded him, but gradually, he stopped doing them altogether, even when asked. This increased my workload. Over time, extra hours at work piled up, eating into my sleep. Exhausted both mentally and physically, I decided to talk to Matt about it. When I got home, he was already lounging on the couch with a beer in hand. He didn't even acknowledge me. Despite my frustration, I approached calmly. Hey, Matt, there's something we need to discuss. Keeping his eyes fixed on the TV, he replied, What is it? I took the remote from his hand and turned off the TV. Hey, what are you doing? I was watching that. My husband jumped up, raising his voice. I told you I wanted to talk, right? It's important. Please listen. What a bother. So what's this about? I'm not exactly swimming in free time, you know. Free time. You've been glued to the TV and drinking beer. Holding back the urge to yell, I kept my cool and pressed on. Matt, you haven't been pitching in around the house lately, have you? Why not? We agreed to share chores since we both work, didn't we? Isn't it obvious? Doing housework isn't my job. What do you mean? Cleaning the bathroom and doing dishes were your responsibilities, weren't they? Why should I, as a husband, have to do that? Those tasks are for women. Wait, are you serious? You were the one who suggested we split the chores. That was just for show to look like a good husband, isn't it clear? At our wedding, you even told everyone, I'm so lucky my husband helps around the house. That was the whole point. Haha. So, you're saying you only helped out to improve your image during the wedding? With a smirk, my husband said, Exactly. I was stunned by my husband's words, unable to comprehend such audacity. I'm exhausted from working late too. After getting home later than you, how could you say something like that to me? Just a reminder, you're not exactly a beauty queen, okay? What? Why are you bringing this up now? What does my appearance have to do with this discussion? Someone as ordinary as me should be grateful to have married someone like you, and you're complaining about simple chores? Know your place. Matt, my husband, shouted and turned on the TV without waiting for my response. He took a sip of his half-empty beer and casually shifted his focus away from me. I couldn't believe it. I'm working late too, so how could he say such things? No matter how I look at it, that's just wrong. I wanted to say a lot, but speaking up now would only lead to a fight. To calm myself, I went straight to bed after taking a bath that night. Since then, I tried repeatedly to talk to Matt, but was always brushed off. Every attempt at conversation was met with, "Don't tell me what to do," leaving no room for discussion. It seemed Matt avoided me, often leaving the house on his days off. Naturally, he neglected housework, even on my days off, leaving me to handle it all at once. Time passed, and as my job entered a busy period, my overtime hours increased significantly. Then Matt exploded again in anger. "Hey, do you know what time it is? Where's my dinner?" Matt started yelling the moment I returned home after a 3-hour overtime shift. "I told you this morning I'd be working late today, so you should either cook or get takeout." "What? Are you serious? Why do I have to cook? I wouldn't mind takeout, but do we even have money for that? Are you going to pay? Why should I? I'm busy too, so can you help out a bit?" The mention of busy seemed to trigger him. He kicked the table leg and snapped at me with a furious look. "I don't care if you're busy. You're always doing overtime because you can't manage your time. It's not that. My workload at work is really heavy right now. Don't act like you're all that just because you can handle a bit of work. You should just do what I tell you, you foolish woman." From that day on, I kept my distance from Matt to avoid his scolding. I prepared dinner ahead of time on days I knew I'd be working late. I also took on all the housework on my days off. Looking back, maybe I should have left him right then and there. But even then, I couldn't bring myself to truly hate him. Living like this, my burden gradually became too much to bear. After 2 months, both my body and mind were exhausted, and I lost my motivation for work. One day, on my way to work, I slipped on the subway stairs and fell. Though I remained conscious, I lay immobile, ripped by pain, and had to be transported by ambulance. Even upon reaching the hospital, the agony persisted, restricting my movement. After completing all the tests, the doctor entered my room and said, "You've fractured your leg and have bruises on your arm and back. You must be in a lot of pain." "Yes, I can't move as freely as I'd like. You may be in this state for a few days. You look pale. Have you been feeling tired?" Anyway, I'll need to stay in the hospital for a while. Should I inform my family?" "Yes, please do." As I checked my phone, a message from a colleague awaited me. They had witnessed the ambulance taking me away from the subway station. They had already informed my workplace and contacted Matt, my husband. Exhausted from the day's events, relief washed over me, and I drifted into a deep sleep. Hours later, my phone buzzed, waking me up. Matt's name lit up the screen. Perhaps he was calling out of concern. With a mix of curiosity and apprehension, I answered, "Hello." "Hey, where have you been? Come home right now." Confused by Matt's raised voice, I couldn't hide my confusion. "Wait, didn't you hear? What's going on?" "I had an accident at the station. I'm in the hospital now. I fractured my leg and they're admitting me." After a brief silence, he exploded. "Are you kidding me? Hospitalized? You're not using this as an excuse to avoid doing chores, are you?" "What? No. Why would I lie about something like this? Didn't the office contact you?" "No calls came through. Even if you're trying to trick me, it won't work. And even if it's true, it's not my problem. Just come back and make dinner, all right?" "What?" "Hold on, Matt." My words were cut off as he abruptly ended the call. How could he be so dismissive? Isn't it normal to be concerned when your spouse is hospitalized? Am I just here for Matt to delegate chores to? Exhausted, I lay back down on the bed. A message from Matt popped up on my phone. "If you're not coming home, I'll order takeout. You're paying." As soon as I read the stark, emotionless message, clarity washed over me. It was foolish to dwell on this any longer. Just as I was contemplating divorce, there came a knock on my hospital room door. When I saw who entered, I couldn't believe my eyes. My father-in-law and mother-in-law. "What are you doing here?" My in-laws lived far away and hadn't been close to Matt for some time. After we got married, I rarely saw them, maybe once a year at most. Their unexpected presence baffled me. Seeing my confusion, my mother-in-law spoke gently. "Eileen, we heard you were taken to the hospital in an ambulance. We were worried." "How did you find out?" "We received a call from your office. Ha! But my office tried to reach Matt several times before contacting you. He didn't answer any calls, so they reached out to his childhood home, which was listed as an emergency contact. That's why you're here. Their unexpected kindness brought tears to my eyes. I was genuinely touched that they had come all this way out of concern for me. Holding back my emotions, I gratefully lowered my head to Matt's parents. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, thank you so much. It's all right, dear. We're family, but where is Matt? You mean he hasn't arrived? No. They seemed surprised by my answer. Just then, my phone rang. It was Matt calling. Hello. What's wrong with you? Are you really not planning to come back? Matt's sudden outburst caught Mr. and Mrs. Johnson off guard, and they exchanged worried glances. I gestured for them to stay quiet, placing my finger on my lips. They nodded silently, and I responded to Matt. I've been admitted to the hospital. I won't be able to come home for a few days. Hospitalized for a fracture. Stop being so delicate. Get yourself out of there and make some food. Mrs. Johnson looked ready to protest, but Mr. Johnson held her back. Matt continued ranting, unaware his parents were listening. Just so you know, if you don't, we're getting a divorce, okay? A divorce? Are you serious? Of course. Why wouldn't I be? There's no reason to stay with someone like you who not only lacks attractiveness, but also neglects their household duties. Haha. His laughter over the phone left me speechless, stunned by his callousness. Isn't this going too far? He had always belittled others. I had to respond. Hey, are you serious saying things like that? Your parents are furious. What are you talking about? His response was light-hearted, as if he thought it was a joke. I handed my phone to my in-laws and let them take over. They unleashed a fierce reprimand through the phone. Matt, how could you say such things to Eileen? How can you be so heartless when your wife is in the hospital? We don't even recognize you as our son anymore. You're disowned. Wait, hold on. It's not what you think. There's a reason for this. There's no excuse for your behavior. All you do is spew venom. I'm ashamed to call you my son. Apologize to Eileen right now. Feeling cornered by his parents, my husband suddenly turned on me. Eileen, enough. Using my mom and dad like this. Exploiting them. It's your fault for not answering your company's call, isn't it? That's why they had to get involved. They called that number from your office. How misleading. Fine, I'll divorce you. Are you okay with that? I released all the pent-up anger and resentment, standing my ground. Divorce? Bring it on. I want nothing to do with a man like you. How long will you continue to think you're above everyone else? I have no reason to stay married to you anymore. If you understand that, never show your face to me again. Get lost, you piece of garbage. Following the divorce from my husband Matt, he initially hesitated, but with the help of my in-laws recommending a divorce attorney, we managed to separate amicably. The divorce brought significant changes to Matt's life. He began eating out for every meal, and his health declined. Unable to manage his laundry, I heard he showed up to work in wrinkled suits and shirts. Consequently, his reputation among coworkers took a nosedive. Did you hear? He didn't even visit his wife in the hospital. That's pretty messed up. Well, no wonder she left him. Ha ha ha. Over time, Matt began to skip work without giving any notice. With no one supporting him, it seemed inevitable that he would soon be pushed to resign. On the contrary, I was discharged from the hospital and returned to my usual work routine. Despite now being divorced, my job kept me occupied, lessening the impact more than I had anticipated. Moving forward, if I have the chance to meet someone new, I'll carefully evaluate them to ensure I find genuine happiness next time. How many times had I endured such cutting remarks? It seemed as though my worth was constantly questioned, my abilities scorned. I had entered into marriage with sincere affection, believing in the promise of happiness together. But as time wore on, that love faded into the ether. Instead, my husband's authoritative demeanor grew more pronounced with each passing day, burdening me even with the care of his own mother. I found myself teetering on the precipice of both physical and emotional exhaustion. If this trajectory persisted, I feared for my sanity. Yet, in my darkest moment, an unexpected beacon of support emerged. My own mother-in-law, the very person whose care had become an additional weight on my shoulders. I'm happy to rewrite it for you. My name's Mary Wagner, and I'm 30 years old. After finishing university, I landed a job at a publishing company. However, I bid farewell to my career upon tying the knot. embracing the role of a full-time housewife. Friends often express their envy, assuming I must lead a charmed life. How fortunate you are to be a homemaker. Your husband must be quite successful, they remark. But the truth is, my married life lacks the joy they envision. In fact, it feels more akin to a descent into the depths of despair. The root cause of my unhappiness. My husband Jack. Our paths crossed in the workplace, and after 2 years of courtship, we exchanged vows. Jack, 3 years my senior, possessed a reserved demeanor, and we weren't exactly the epitome of affectionate partners. Nonetheless, I was drawn to his steadfast sense of self and mature demeanor. I envisioned a tranquil, content life together. That was my hope, at least. Once we exchanged vows, Jack's demeanor underwent a stark transformation. Frankly put, he adopted a patriarchal stance. I came to this realization mere days into our marriage. At Jack's behest, I embraced the role of a full-time homemaker, throwing myself into domestic duties from the onset of our union. On that particular evening, I diligently prepared dinner, eagerly awaiting Jack's return. He arrived home a tad after 7 p.m. Upon surveying the meal laid out before him, his voice erupted with dissatisfaction. "What's this?" he barked. "It's a casserole with salad and a side of soup," I responded hesitantly. "Don't toy with me. If you're catering to your weary husband, it ought to be a lavish spread. Your past successes are no excuse. How can you falter at such basic tasks? You're utterly incompetent as a woman. Utterly." "You could have said that differently," I murmur, my troubled expression met with Jack's glare. Suddenly, he hurls the dish of salad to the floor. A startled scream escapes my lips. "What?" "It's because you, as my wife, can't even manage the basics, isn't it?" Jack interjects sharply. I made my expectations clear. There's no need to disrespect the food like that. Shut up. Instead of making excuses, use that deficient brain of yours to consider how to better fulfill your role as my wife, you fool. It's the first time I've been called that. Sure, I've faced reprimands from my parents, arguments with my brother and friends, but never have I been subjected to such cruelty, especially from the man I love. It's only been a few days since our wedding. I never imagined he would react so harshly over a dinner choice. Nevertheless, as a housewife, I remain financially reliant on him. I can't risk defying my husband. As a newlywed, my utmost desire is to avoid upsetting him. Since that incident, I've been tiptoeing around him, careful not to trigger his anger. I meticulously ironed every piece of laundry, prepared the simplest of meals like loaded potato soup, and seasoned side dishes to perfection. Not a single hair must be left on the floor. Under this constant pressure, my nerves fray. Yet his patriarchal control only tightens. "There's a crease in this shirt sleeve. Can't you see?" he berates. "I am sorry. I'll iron it right away," I stammer. "I'm already running late for work." "You're always so slow," he complains. "I'll hurry," I assure him. "You won't have time. You're insufferable in the morning." "How much more do you want to upset me, you incompetent woman?" he snaps. "I'm sorry. Truly deeply sorry. I apologize," my voice trembling. Whenever I erred, I instinctively lowered my head in apology, a practice enforced by my husband. Depending on the gravity of my mistake, the depth of my contrition varied. Sometimes a mere bow would suffice for forgiveness, but for more serious transgressions, kneeling was required. And in moments of repeated mistakes, he would ominously present me with a completed divorce document. It's astonishing how quickly one can become accustomed to such treatment. After a year of enduring this cycle, I began to internalize a sense of utter worthlessness. Yet I couldn't bear the thought of divorce, especially in my current state of unemployment. I couldn't shatter my parents' joy over our marriage by admitting to such a failure, especially not after such a short time. The prospect of enduring perpetual reprimand from my husband filled me with despair for the future. As usual, I was in the midst of preparing dinner, anticipating his return. My daily ritual involved completing the meal by 7 p.m., ensuring it was ready for him to enjoy whenever he arrived. The moment the front door creaked open, I began setting the table. If I failed to finish before he sat down, it would inevitably lead to another round of apologies. Typically, my husband would take his seat in silence, but on this particular day, something felt different. As he loosened his tie, he initiated a conversation. "Mary, we're moving to my parents' house this weekend." I paused, puzzled. "Your parents' house? You mean your mother's place?" He nodded. "Yes, that's correct." "Have everything packed by then?" I couldn't help but inquire. "Why the sudden change, Jack?" You've always been adamant about not returning to your parents' house." His icy stare silenced my probing, and after a momentary pause, he spoke. "My mother had a fall, and living independently has become too challenging for her." My concern surged. "We should go to her immediately. She's been in the hospital for a week. We'll move once she's discharged this weekend," he explained. "I understand now," I replied quietly. "But why the sudden change? You've always resisted returning to your parents' home. Can you guess why?" He remarked with a chilling edge. "I can't deny the allure of potential inheritance," he confessed, his tone betraying a hint of satisfaction. "You see, my father was an ordinary man, but my mother's family is wealthy. She has a substantial amount of money." "What does that have to do with her current situation?" I questioned. His lips curled into a calculating smile. "If I play the devoted son during this ordeal, perhaps I'll be in line for a significant inheritance. If we, as a couple, rush to her side, I'm confident she'll be inclined to bestow the entire inheritance upon us." "Isn't that a bit disrespectful?" I dared to question. "Shut up. You're being supported by me, so just listen quietly," he retorted sharply. "I am sorry," I stammered, cowed by his outburst. The air was thick with tension as his words echoed in the room, leaving me feeling small and powerless. Instinctively, I offered my usual apology. With a triumphant air, he declared, "Listen, from now on, you'll be taking care of my mother. You'll work as a maid in my parents' house for the rest of your life." I faltered at his words. Is that what you mean?" I ventured to ask, but he cut me off sharply. "Don't argue. Who do you think is providing for your current lifestyle? It's all thanks to me, isn't it? Depending on how well you care for my mother, our inheritance could be affected. So don't neglect your duties. Understand?" Pressured to respond, I murmured softly, "Yes." His satisfaction evident, he flashed a smug smile before beginning his meal. Forcing me into the role of caregiver solely for the sake of his mother's inheritance, my husband doesn't regard me as his wife. To him, I'm merely a housemaid. Though I was aware of this truth, hearing it explicitly was a jolt to my senses. Yet I lacked the courage to challenge him. In a way, I felt as though I had been brainwashed, my own aspirations erased. The following day, following my husband's orders, I started packing our belongings. A week later, as directed by him, we relocated to my mother-in-law's residence, coinciding with her discharge from the hospital. On the day of her discharge, Jack didn't show up at the hospital, citing work obligations. Consequently, I was the one accompanying my mother-in-law home. During our journey back, she offered an apology. "Mary, I'm truly sorry. It's because of me that you're going through all of this. Don't worry about it. As a housewife, if I can lend you support while being at home, then nothing could be more important." I reassured her. "Thank you. But are you not bothered by how sudden this all is?" she inquired. "Well, the packing was a bit rushed, I suppose," I admitted. "I can imagine. Even I was taken aback by Jack's decision to move in with us. I wonder what prompted him to do this so abruptly." "Mary, have you heard anything?" she pressed. "No, I haven't heard anything," I replied softly. It wasn't surprising that my mother-in-law found the situation peculiar. Jack had always harbored a dislike for her, often expressing his grievances with remarks like, "She's a nuisance and I'd rather not be around her." Yet he swiftly moved in with her upon her hospitalization, driven by the prospect of her inheritance. To be honest, I was startled by Jack's sudden change in behavior. However, I couldn't bring myself to disclose the truth to my mother-in-law. Striving to maintain composure, I concealed my inner turmoil. Thus began my life as a caregiver, navigating the unfamiliar responsibilities alongside the household chores in the spacious family home. Even amidst our return to his parents' residence, Jack's domineering demeanor remained unchanged, subjecting me to verbal abuse almost daily. In my mother-in-law's absence, there was no respite from the demands of housekeeping and caregiving, and my days were consumed with ceaseless activity from dawn till dusk. This routine persisted for about a month until one day, while I was attending to my mother-in-law's needs, she expressed her concern. "Mary, have you lost weight again?" No, please don't worry about it, Mother," I reassured her. "Are you certain? I noticed the same thing when you first moved in. You seemed much more fatigued compared to when you were newlywed," she remarked. She was correct. Over the course of our year and a half of marriage, I had shed 15 pounds. It wasn't due to skipping meals, but rather a diminished appetite and a lack of leisurely dining time. My mother-in-law discerned the changes in me, ones that even Jack hadn't noticed. Simply that acknowledgement eased some of my loneliness. Wanting to alleviate her concerns, I mustered a smile. Don't fret over me, mother. Just sharing these conversations with you each day brings me joy. Mary, let's steer away from this gloomy talk. Shall I attend to your other hand, mother? I suggested, attempting to lighten the mood. Oh yes, please, she responded. Just as I began to assist her, my phone abruptly rang. It seems to be Jack, my mother-in-law observed, causing my body to stiffen. Jack insisted I answer his calls promptly. However, with a wet towel in hand, I couldn't respond immediately. Yet I knew any delay would provoke his anger. Utilizing my elbow, I managed to tap the answer button and switched the call to speaker. Hello, I greeted hesitantly. Instantly, a barrage of angry shouts erupted from the other end of the line. Hey, don't play games. Why did you answer immediately? Jack demanded furiously. I'm sorry. I was a bit preoccupied, I stammered, bracing myself for his wrath. What? A maid should answer on the first ring. But I was occupied and couldn't, I explained. Didn't I always tell you not to talk back? You're so frustrating. Why are you so incapable? Jack's voice seethed with anger. I'm sorry, I apologized meekly. Are you ensuring the old lady is properly cared for? The inheritance hinges on your performance. Do you understand? He pressed. Being humiliated in front of my mother-in-law filled me with shame. Jack continued to hurl insults, branding me incompetent and bothersome before abruptly ending the call. Following Jack's tirade, a weighty silence engulfed the room. It was my mother-in-law who broke it. Mary, was that Jack? Does he always speak to you like that? Yes, but it's my fault. I am incompetent, I admitted quietly. What nonsense is that? You're such a kind and wonderful girl, Mary, she reassured me with sincerity. Mom, I can't ignore this, Mary. It's time to take a stand. My mother-in-law then proposed a plan. Following her lead, I gathered all of Jack's belongings and deposited them in the yard before locking the front door. Together, we awaited Jack's return. Several hours passed before we heard noises from the entrance. It was likely Jack, but the locked door remained impassable. Ignoring the intercom's persistent chimes, I followed my mother-in-law's instructions. Eventually, my phone began to ring. It was Jack. Switching the call to speaker, I answered, hello. He began shouting immediately, hey, stop playing games. Open the front door this instant. I can't do that. What? What do you mean? This is your mother's directive. Unable to grasp the situation, he continued to shout, stop messing around and open it now. In response, my mother-in-law's voice rang out, cold and resolute. The one who's messing around here is you, you fool. Mom, I always knew you were distant, but I never imagined you would treat your wife like this. No, that's not. I sensed something was amiss when you suddenly moved in to exploit your wife and rely on inheritance. How could you lead such a disgraceful existence? My mother-in-law admonished. No, that's not true, Jack protested. What's not true? I have no intention of leaving you any inheritance. If you understand, get lost. This is my house. You will never be allowed back in. Flustered by my mother-in-law's accusations, Jack began pounding on the door. Through the phone, I could hear him pleading, please do something. I have an ally in my mother-in-law. I won't be manipulated any longer, I declared with resolve. Addressing Jack firmly over the phone, I stated, I want a divorce. I can't continue with you any longer. What? What are you saying? He exclaimed in disbelief. Enough. I refuse to remain married to a man like you any longer. I refuse to squander my life. I refuse to sacrifice my own happiness for yours, I declared resolutely. Don't be ridiculous. You can't live without me, Jack protested. There's nothing I can't handle. No matter how difficult it may be, it's preferable to being with you. I will conquer any obstacle. I no longer require your presence in my life. I refuse to tolerate garbage like you, I retorted firmly. With that, I abruptly ended the call and blocked his number. His shouts could be heard from outside, eventually turning into cries of despair. My mother-in-law reported his disturbance to the authorities. Due to his disruptive behavior, he was escorted away by the police. Using the divorce papers he had previously provided, I initiated formal proceedings to end our marriage. Additionally, I pursued legal action against him for the mental and physical anguish he had caused me. With my mother-in-law's support as a witness, the legal proceedings progressed smoothly. After compensating me with a lump sum, Jack's savings were depleted. Furthermore, his employment was terminated by his company upon discovering his police record, relegating him to a lower position. Naturally, my mother-in-law declined to leave her inheritance to Jack. After consulting with a lawyer and honoring my mother-in-law's wish to entrust everything to me, it was agreed that she would transfer approximately $1 million to me annually. I continue to provide care for my mother-in-law in her home. It's the least I can do for her now. Mary, I'm deeply sorry for always burdening you. Even after divorcing Jack, you're still here caring for me. Why do you say that, Mom? I should be the one thanking you. Truly, I feel blessed to have a daughter like you. The feeling is mutual. Let's continue to support each other, all right? My life alongside my mother-in-law is now filled with more joy than I could have imagined. I'll strive to do everything within my power for her until the end of her days. Your favorite crab meat pizza has arrived, Mom. Enjoy to your heart's content. As my daughter-in-law places the plate before me, her kindness seems out of character. I can't help but question this abrupt shift. It strikes me that my eldest child and his wife might be orchestrating some scheme, using food as their tool. Their history of hostility and past attempts to deceive me weigh heavily on my mind. The lavishness of this pizza only adds to my skepticism. Their sudden display of kindness feels more like a calculated move than genuine warmth. Trusting them blindly would be naive. It's clear they're plotting something. I refuse to be underestimated. I possess the capability to defend myself and reverse any situation if necessary. My name is Mary, a housewife in her 60s. Since my husband's passing years ago, I've lived alone. Initially, when my eldest child and their spouse proposed I move in with them, I declined. They were newlyweds, and I wanted them to relish that special phase. Nevertheless, they insisted on residing nearby out of concern for my well-being, a gesture for which I was genuinely appreciative. Their frequent visits, despite my reassurances that they needn't feel obligated, were a testament to their caring nature. My eldest child would often express worry, prompting me to relent and indulge their concern. Similarly, my daughter-in-law sought opportunities to foster a bond with me even when my eldest was occupied. I took pride in my child's choice of partner, believing her to be a person of integrity. However, I was oblivious to their ulterior motives at the time, a realization that now vexes me. Reflecting on those moments, I am irked by my own gullibility. Genuine kindness without hidden agendas is a rarity. I allowed myself to be swayed by their eloquent assurances, oblivious to the underlying truth. It wasn't until later that I uncovered their true intentions. One evening, they dropped by and ended up staying overnight, citing a lack of plans for the following day. Though I hesitated to encroach on their time as a couple, suggesting they return home since it was nearby, my daughter-in-law was insistent. We're eager to strengthen our bond, so we'd like to stay, she asserted. Reluctantly, I acquiesced, offering them the guest room. This house, a creation of my late husband, holds many unused rooms since it's too large for just me. Despite its dustiness, my daughter-in-law graciously assisted in tidying up, showcasing her adeptness at housework and reinforcing my favorable opinion of her. In the quiet of night, I stirred, parched, and made my way to the kitchen. En route, I noticed the living room bathed in light. Intrigued, I peered in, finding them seated on the sofa engaged in conversation. Unable to resist the temptation, I surreptitiously listened in, inadvertently overhearing a dialogue between my eldest child and his wife. "I'm utterly drained," remarked the eldest child. "That old lady has us toiling like slaves, don't you agree?" "Just endure a little longer," the wife countered. "Once we secure Mom's inheritance, we're free. If her husband hadn't been a CEO, we wouldn't be in this predicament. It's astounding how easily she's deceived just because we're cordial to her. Mom's always been emotionally fragile. She'll likely bestow the inheritance upon us." I was dumbfounded by what I overheard. If their words held truth, then their kindness was merely a facade to lay claim to my late husband's estate. Had all their previous gestures been insincere? Every word they uttered to me were family bound to support each other, or so I thought. Why this fixation on the inheritance? I couldn't discern any financial troubles on his part, but perhaps he's entangled in dire straits unbeknownst to me. What drives them to such lengths for an inheritance? Is it solely for monetary gain? The behavior of the couple left me pondering, perplexed by their motives. I resolved to confront them about their recent conduct. Through inquiries within the neighborhood and among acquaintances, a startling revelation surfaced. Both of them were deeply entrenched in gambling, having accumulated an overwhelming debt far beyond their means to repay through conventional employment. It dawned on me why they were so desperate for the inheritance. My late husband had bequeathed a substantial portion to our eldest child, albeit less than what I received, yet still a sizable sum. They had recklessly squandered it, plunging into insurmountable debt. Their kindness, it seemed, was merely a guise to secure the inheritance from me. Following this discovery, I grew wary of their intentions. "Do you require any assistance, Mom? We're here to lend a hand," my daughter-in-law inquired, her words ringing hollow in light of the unsettling truth. "Your favorite crab meat pizza is here," my daughter-in-law announced cheerfully as she placed the plate before me. "Mom, eat as much as you want." Her sudden kindness struck me as odd. I couldn't help but question this abrupt change. Suspicions gnawed at me. It seemed my eldest child and his wife were orchestrating something, perhaps using food as a guise. They had a history of hostility and deceptive acts, so their newfound warmth raised red flags. It was clear to me that something wasn't right with this extravagant pizza. Their niceness felt contrived, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were up to something. I refused to be underestimated. Despite being a housewife in my 60s, living alone since my husband's passing, I was not without my own strength. When my husband died, my eldest child and their spouse had offered for me to move in with them. However, I declined, wanting them to cherish their newlywed bliss. Yet they insisted on living nearby out of concern for me, a gesture I initially appreciated. Their frequent visits, despite my reassurances that they needn't feel obligated, only fueled my suspicions. But it wasn't until one fateful night that my doubts were confirmed. They stayed over, claiming they had no plans for the next day. I suggested they return home since it was close by, but my daughter-in-law insisted they stay to deepen our relationship. Reluctantly, I agreed, offering them the guest room. In the dead of night, I caught them conversing in the living room. What I overheard shattered any remaining trust I had in them. They spoke callously about me, about their plans to secure my late husband's inheritance. They had squandered their own fortune on gambling debts, leaving them desperate for money. Their kindness towards me was a ruse, a means to an end. From that moment on, I kept my guard up. When my daughter-in-law extended hollow offers of help, I politely declined, wary of their true intentions. Their subsequent attempt to confront me about a supposed new love interest only reinforced my skepticism. Their concern was a thinly veiled attempt to maintain control over my finances, and I refused to be manipulated any longer. I could see right through her facade. It was clear she was only concerned about protecting her inheritance. Yet my daughter-in-law continued to play the role of the caring daughter-in-law, never revealing her true intentions. That's acceptable for now, I thought. The true nature of my eldest child and their spouse will be revealed in due time. I'll witness their true selves when the moment is right. And that moment arrived sooner than anticipated. "Happy birthday, Mom," exclaimed my eldest child, presenting me with a bag from a fancy pizza establishment. Inside were an array of pizzas, including my beloved crab meat pizza. "Thank you, but let me handle these," I insisted, prepared to start plating them. "No, Mom, today's your day. Sit back and relax. I'll take care of it," declared my daughter-in-law as she whisked the bag away to the kitchen. My eldest child followed suit, offering assistance. Despite their seemingly genuine efforts to celebrate my birthday, I remained wary. Something was amiss. As I contemplated their motives, they returned with plates in hand. Before me sat a steaming slice of crab meat pizza. "Here's your favorite, Mom. Enjoy," my eldest child affirmed, echoing their spouse's sentiments. To an outsider, it might have seemed like a joyous birthday celebration, but I knew better. There had to be something sinister lurking on that plate. I refused to be fooled. Their excessive kindness raised suspicions that couldn't be ignored. With my husband no longer by my side, I understood the importance of protecting myself. I vowed never to place my trust in them again. They would soon rue the day they attempted to deceive me. "Well, it certainly appears appetizing, but my tastes have evolved recently. I find myself drawn to the foie gras on your plate," I remarked, reaching for my eldest child's dish. They tried to intervene, but I feigned ignorance, questioning, "Is there a problem? You know, I've developed a newfound appreciation for foie gras. And if memory serves, you used to enjoy crab meat too, didn't you?" I suggested we share both dishes, observing the sudden pallor that washed over my eldest child's face. It was evident that they had schemed to manipulate me by tampering with my favorite pizza. Their reluctance to indulge confirmed my suspicions. But it looks so tantalizing. Won't you have a taste? I prodded, watching as their facade crumbled under the weight of their deceit. With resolve, I reached for a slice of the crab meat pizza and offered it to my eldest child. Reluctantly, they took a bite, their expression tense as if anticipating the aftermath. Daughter-in-law glanced at them, her concern evident in the pallor of their face. You seem a bit off color. Perhaps the pizza didn't agree with you, Mom, she suggested, her voice tinged with apprehension. Considering how your husband is feeling, maybe it's best to call it a night and prepare something different, she added, her panic palpable. Sensing daughter-in-law's desperation to end the meal, I countered, but your son doesn't appear well either. It's safer for you to stay the night. Despite her attempts to deflect, insisting they leave, her words faltered, betraying her desire to depart. It was clear she was eager to make a swift exit. I always thought that for a couple attempting to deceive others, they're remarkably inept liars. They unravel at the slightest hint of unpredictability, I mused to myself as I observed my eldest child. Suddenly, something peculiar occurred. After a few moments, with a resounding thud, they collapsed to the ground. As I approached, I realized they were deeply asleep, likely drugged with a sleeping pill. Oh, couldn't keep your eyes open, could you? Must have been exhausted, I remarked, tilting my head in feigned innocence. Daughter-in-law's frustration boiled over. Enough. Why won't things go according to plan? Today was supposed to be crucial, she exclaimed, slapping my eldest child's cheek in a futile attempt to rouse them. But they remained unconscious, oblivious to her distress. I stood in stunned silence as daughter-in-law's facade crumbled before my eyes. Disregarding my presence, she began to confess. I'd been pretending to be the dutiful daughter-in-law, all in hopes of securing the inheritance to clear our debts. Today was meant to be the final step. We planned to incapacitate you and steal your banking card. But nothing went as planned. It's your fault, she accused, her glare piercing. Their scheme to drug me and steal my banking card under the guise of a birthday celebration was truly deplorable. I couldn't stoop to their level, so I decided to confront them head-on. I've known all along that your kindness was just a front to get to my money. That's why I kept my distance and declined your offer of pizza, I revealed, watching as daughter-in-law's expression shifted from shock to disbelief. It was clear she had underestimated my awareness of their deceit. How foolish they must feel for thinking they could deceive me so easily. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm not as naive as you both seem to think, I continued, a hint of scorn in my voice. Your sudden displays of kindness always struck me as suspicious, and I even overheard your conversation about the inheritance when I stayed over, discussing your plans in the target's own home. That's just plain foolish. Don't label us as fools. We've been doing our best, daughter-in-law retorted defensively. If this is your best effort, then it's no wonder you're drowning in debt, I countered sharply, watching as daughter-in-law's expression shifted with discomfort at the mention of the word debt. And you know about the debt too. How much do you know? It was evident that daughter-in-law hadn't anticipated my knowledge of their financial woes. Her anxiety was palpable at the mention of their debt. I did some digging and discovered the extent of your gambling debts. It was quite a shock to find out. You've managed to accumulate quite a substantial debt, I stated matter-of-factly, noting the growing pallor of daughter-in-law's face. She must have realized there was no escaping the truth. Mom, I'm truly sorry. Please forgive us. We're struggling to make ends meet. Can you lend us some money? We'll repay you, daughter-in-law pleaded earnestly, her once confident demeanor now replaced with desperation. Even in her distress, she continued to seek financial assistance. It was disheartening to realize that, to her, I was merely seen as a convenient source of support. I'm sorry, but I won't be giving you a single cent. I can't trust individuals like you to fulfill your promises, I responded firmly, refusing to yield to her pleas. You need to take responsibility for your actions. Daughter-in-law's demeanor shifted to one of resignation at my words. Though visibly disheartened, she seemed to comprehend my unwavering stance and refrained from asking for money again. Following that confrontation, my interactions with my eldest son and daughter-in-law gradually waned. They ceased visiting, barely maintaining any communication. Surprisingly, when those days arrived, I didn't experience loneliness as I had expected. Instead, I felt a sense of liberation, free from the shackles of deceit. Eventually, my eldest child and daughter-in-law relocated. According to neighbors, they were escorted away by dubious individuals, likely unable to settle their debts and forced to flee to a distant state. Perhaps they now endure harrowing circumstances, plagued by the consequences of their actions. Yet such matters are no longer my concern. We are estranged, our ties severed. I bid farewell to this tumultuous chapter, confiding in my late husband's photograph. His expression seemed to exude a sense of relief, as if acknowledging the closure of a fraught period. My sole family now resides in the memory of my late husband, the one who steadfastly stood by me. The life is fleeting. I am determined to embrace it with strength, cherishing the cherished moments shared with my husband.